Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. Typical off-season show for you. We're going to talk a little bit recruiting and a little bit of whatever else we can cobble together. Got the usual crew with us: Eric McKinney, Mark Holkin, and me, Chris Arledge, your substitute host. Guys, let's just jump right in. This is the start of what has turned into the most important part of the recruiting season, when Lincoln Riley brings recruits over to his house so they can look at the ocean and eat fancy food. They had their first group of official visitors this past weekend, including some big-time names. Let's start there, because that's, I think, the biggest thing going on with USC football. Eric, what can you tell us? Do we know anything about what happened this week? What are your thoughts?
So this felt like a weekend that kind of set the table for the rest of the summer. I don't think there was anybody uncommitted going into this weekend where you thought, okay, they're gonna lock this guy up, and here comes a commitment from this guy. You had a commit in Drake Stubbs coming out from Florida, the safety. He's a top 60 guy. He's the number 6 safety. It sounds like, at this point in the year, are you wrapping anything up with anybody? No, but took the right steps to kind of show why, he committed to USC and felt good about it. What stood out to me was the talent that was in there. You had Jonah Williams, a safety from Texas, and Trey McNutt, a safety from Ohio. And those are two states that have a couple of pretty good football programs in and around them that you're going to have to recruit against for those guys. But Williams is the number 1 safety. McNutt's the number 2 safety. And again, it sounds like USC did what they needed to do to kind of put themselves in the picture there. Are you going to get 3 safeties like that in one class? No, but I think that's a spot, and I mentioned this in kind of the takeaway story that I did. That's a spot where, boy, if you're looking at USC and you've got Doug Belk as your position coach, Danton Lynn, who has a ton of safety experience, as your coordinator, and kind of the systems that he's coached in, I think USC could do pretty well with safeties, and clearly got enough of their attention for them to take that visit and then talk about taking more visits. I think that's what stands out, is a number of these guys talked about, yeah, I'm coming back. And you can't retake official visits, but you can take more unofficial visits. And if they do show up in the fall for games, I think that tells you a lot about their interest level. But yeah, this was not something where you saw, right, the fight on emojis go up on Twitter on Sunday like you can when there's visitors, where you feel like, okay, we're just locking these guys up, and there's going to be 6, 7 commitments, whatever it is, after that weekend. It wasn't that. The good news for USC, it wasn't that anywhere else either. It didn't seem like any guys that they're really in the mix for, or that are committed to them when they took other visits. It didn't feel like this is immediate, right now, going to flip, going to lose them. So all of that, a long way to say, good kickoff weekend for the summer. There are big weekends coming the next 2 weekends as well. And you saw a lot of 4-star talent, top 100 talent, top 150 talent on campus. And that's what you need to do at this point in this recruiting cycle.
So, Mark, in addition to the big safeties this week, who else came out that USC fans should keep an eye on?
I think most people probably feel confident about Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, the linebacker from, Manassas, Virginia. He plays at IMG Academy. He and the players that Eric had mentioned, specifically Trey McNutt and Hilton Stubbs, they seem to form a nice little bond over the weekend. If you're looking at social media, looking at the pictures that were floating around out there. So on that note, that's a good sign. Boateng had said that, he doesn't plan to commit before at least coming back for another game day at USC. So that's one of those unofficial visits that Eric might be alluding to. And what I would say to that, USC fans, is when he decides to come back, make sure you're filling up the stadium and not a Big Ten team. Bunch of fans are doing that. Look, this was I think going to be their smallest official visit weekend as far as numbers are concerned. They had 11 guys show up. What's his name? Drake Stubbs is already committed. Tristan Castro, a commit, made a cameo appearance as well over the weekend. But as far as, can you get one of those other two safeties? I don't know. I mean, Trey McNutt's dad is a 3-year letterman at Ohio State. He played on the 2002 national championship team. So that would be a tough pull. Not out of the question, though. He had a good time. He's saying all the right things. Again, he comes back for an unofficial visit. If I'm over there in Columbus, Ohio, I'm starting to sweat it a little bit. And then Jonah Williams, look, if you can convince him that, hey, you can play baseball at USC too. Maybe Deuce Robinson spoke a few words to him and said, hey, it can happen. We'll see. Yeah, this weekend was, as Eric, I think, put it perfectly, it was an appetizer. Next weekend, and then the one on the 21st, or when things should kind of, we'll use the term kaboom, explode around here.
Yeah, I mean, USC seems to be doing a pretty good job of figuring out these June recruiting visits where you stack a lot of talented guys and you distinguish yourself from almost all of the other major programs, right? USC is different because it's in LA, and that's a whole different deal. It's not for everybody, but there are going to be some kids from the Deep South, maybe even from Ohio, although I doubt it, who like what LA has to offer and want to be a part of it. I think this does show, again, we've talked about it before, that Lincoln Riley really plays a high stakes recruiting game. Pete Carroll would land most of his class from California, and he'd go out of state to land first round picks he thought he could get. But those guys were usually the icing on the cake. Lincoln Riley is going after the guys he thinks are the best players in the country, regardless of where they're from. And that means that very seldom does USC have that home field advantage, which used to be very important in recruiting. I think it still matters, right? It still matters. But, when you're talking about bringing in a top 2 safety who lives in Ohio and whose dad played at Ohio State, you're talking about, in the Olympics where you have the divers and they show the level of difficulty before the dive. I don't know what the highest level of difficulty is, but that's it. That's the highest level of difficulty. That's like 38 spins that you have to complete on this one. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, USC also had a big offensive lineman out here and also a kid from out of state. And so we'll see. Not a lot of news has leaked. I suspect that's probably bad news. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but usually, you bring in a guy from Texas, you bring in a guy from Ohio. If they don't commit while you have them there and you're showing them the LA magic, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to hold on to them if they do commit while they're out here. Go ahead, Mark.
What I found interesting, one interesting note, USC is holding their official visit weekend. Ohio State's having their own official visit weekend. And Riley Pettyjohn put out his Final Four list while he's in Columbus, Ohio. USC made the cut along with Ohio State, Texas, and Texas A&M. I don't know. I just found that kind of interesting. You're on your official visit in Columbus, and that's when you're putting out your Final Four list.
Yeah.
He's coming to USC next week. So let me close the circle. He'll be at USC next weekend.
And obviously has some connections to the current USC roster. So we'll see what happens. Huge recruiting weekends the next 2 weeks. And, again, and Eric alluded to this. One of the concerns was that you might lose one of these Georgia kids at Georgia. There's been no announcement that happened either. And I think if you're Georgia, you want to come out of that weekend with either a flip or a reflip back to you. If that doesn't happen, that's not a good sign for Georgia. It's just not. And it is a good sign for USC. Doesn't mean they're going to be able to hold on to those kids. Who knows? I mean, recruiting is a different animal these days. But
I think that's a good not to cut you off, but I think that's an interesting point. With NIL now, are you getting paid for visits or getting paid to make top lists? When are you committing? Do you commit and flip? Does that drive up your price? All of that stuff. That's still stuff that everyone is sort of figuring out. And I think coaches as well, recruiting departments as well. Do you push for commitments on these trips right now, knowing that they want to take more trips? And that might be something where you have to fight and fight and fight. And now you're the target team with the guy committed. Do you just try to make an impression, leave that, and then bring them back for an unofficial later? And the lines between officials and unofficials now are so blurred just in terms of what's enforceable and what a school wants to do and any of that. So I think that's something that's interesting too. Are schools pushing for commitments on these, or are they just saying, hey, come enjoy the time and we'll see what happens on the way out? I know that certainly during the spring, there were specific guys where USC was like, let's get these guys, let's make a statement, let's get these guys committed. It'd be interesting to see kind of how that goes with the rest of these visits. And do you get a sense of, okay, if we can get 6, then that's a major statement and let's do that. But if we're just pushing for 1 and then we know that guy's going to take visits, do we set ourselves up to be hunted? Because it's easier to recruit against one team. Once a guy commits and everybody knows, okay, we got to beat that team, it becomes easier to come up with kind of a recruiting plan against that rather than a guy, I think, rather than a guy who's still open. So again, still a lot of kind of feeling out and how does this work and what is this system set up to do? How best to recruit these guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think traditionally salesmen don't want people to leave the car lot without a commitment. I think if I'm trying to sell anything, I want a commitment from somebody. It doesn't mean they'll walk away from it, but it's a lot easier to hold on to a guy who's made a commitment than a guy who leaves without making up his mind that he wants to be there. But I don't know that the USC coaches see it the same way. They haven't consulted me on sales advice, nor should they. All right, Mark. Any final words on recruiting? We'll probably have a lot to talk about next week, is my assumption.
Yeah, we're holding all of our good stuff until next week.
Good. I was hoping, because I was wondering where all the good stuff was. All right, let's talk about the player-run practices that are starting up. Obviously, when it's player-run practices, the sort of leadership you get from your roster is critical. Mark, what are you thinking? Who are the leaders going to be, or what should we be looking for with the dribs and drabs of information we get out of these things? What should USC fans be looking for with these upcoming PRPs?
So as far as, the way I look at the player run practices is, this is where the team kind of really comes together on their own, finds that bond, that team chemistry. And team captains aren't selected during the summer, but I think that's kind of when they start to develop. They come out of their cocoons. You find out who your vocal leaders are, who's going to make sure everyone's showing up on time, doing the right thing, buying into the culture. That's, I think, is the biggest thing that comes out of the summer sessions. Obviously, the connection between the quarterbacks and the receivers, getting that timing down, the offensive line, all 5 fingers, working together as on the hand. You're looking for that cohesion, the chemistry. You can kind of start to identify who are going to be the guys and who are going to be the guys that are going to be backing up. And, this is really where Benny Wiley this is his season, because the coaches can't be out there when the players have the ball. So once PRPs start, which I think will be soon, I'm looking for Miller Moss to say, all right, man, this is my team now. I'm looking for some guys on the defensive side of the ball to say, this is my side of the ball. You're going to listen to me. We're going to make sure we're doing it right. Guys like Miller Moss, Jonah Monheim, and then if you're looking at a couple transfers, I think you're thinking Kamari Ramsey and Easton Mascarenas Arnold to come on in and say, hey, we've come from some programs that have been down and we helped them turn it around. Let us do that here too. Follow us.
So Mark brings up an interesting issue. When you look at the leadership on the offensive side of the ball, I think everybody expects that Miller Moss and Jonah Monheim are going to be vocal and important leaders. And then you look at the defensive side of the ball and you say, All right, this is the group that we're counting on making a massive improvement this year for USC football to do what it's supposed to do. Who in the world are the leaders on that side of the ball? And are we going to know anything about that based on these PRPs? What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, so I'll hit that question next, but I'm with Mark. It's got to go straight at the middle. I'm taking baseball and using that here. You have to be strongest at the middle. So you go quarterback, you go center, you go someone in the interior, the defensive line, middle linebacker, safety. So you mentioned Kamari Ramsey. He makes perfect sense. He's got as much experience in this defense, right? He and John Humphrey coming over from UCLA. The idea was they were going to be extra coaches during spring. You assume that carries over into summer. That guy in the back end at safety, yeah, Kamari Ramsey. Easton Mascarenas Arnold is a guy who clearly took on kind of that vocal leadership spot. If he's going to start at middle linebacker for you, he's got to be that. He brings in, the strongest accolades probably of anybody with a first team all Pac-12 nod last year. So he's going to be a guy that at least should command respect. I don't know if Bear Alexander has that in him, just in terms of how he kind of approaches it. I would love to see a big step forward from him there. Again, just kind of based on how he seems to approach the game. I don't know if he has that vocal stuff in him to be loud and upfront and push. Would love that switch to flip, because again, he's got to be that guy in the middle. And so for him to develop that would be great. A guy like Nate Clifton has played a lot and comes over from a Vanderbilt program where obviously not a success, but you figure he gets a chance now to be a big part of the defensive line that's going to have a ton of spotlight on it. So you got to find that guy in the defensive line. Elijah Hughes doesn't strike me as an out and out vocal leader and still a young guy. Somebody up there's got to do it. I think Jamil Muhammad is probably comfortable in that role. That's fine on the edge, right? If I'm being nitpicky, you want a big interior guy to do that, but that's fine, right? If he's the guy up front that does that, you need somebody at every level. And I think defensively, it'd be great to have 8 or 9 guys that are just trying to climb over each other and take that defense up to where everybody knows it has to be. I think there's some confidence back there in the defense from coaches and from players. I think they're pretty confident that, again, when we talk about a very good defense, there are some schools that are talking about, can we have the number 1, number 2, number 3? I think we're talking about, can we have a competent defense? And I think there's confidence there. But yeah, for as far as leadership goes, who wants it, right? Who wants to be the guy? Because if you're looking at that USC defense, there's nobody coming back where you say, oh, this guy needs to lead the way. And so it's absolutely up for grabs. Who wants to take it this summer?
So before you chip in here, Chris, to pile on with what Eric was talking about, I would say on the back end, guys coming back that I think can be vocal leaders, Jacoby Covington being one. The other one, oh God, why did the name slip my mind all of a sudden? It'll come back to me. Anyways, I wanted to also talk about some of the younger players that would need to step up to be those vocal leaders. I think we both agree that Jacoby Lane's going to be one of those guys on the opposite side of the ball. But climbing over each other. You were a puppy last year. Now, are you ready to be that dog? Are you ready to yell at somebody and make them do it?
Yeah. It's these PRPs, and we're probably not going to get the sort of information that you would need to make real conclusions about this, because a lot of this stuff is inside the team itself. But this is where you see what sort of culture you have in your football program, right? And the thing is, it doesn't all have to be about vocal leadership. If you're talking about a guy like Bear Alexander, the other guys on that football team are keeping an eye on what Bear Alexander does. Whether he's leading vocally or whether he's leading in terms of work ethic and desire. The most talent, everybody has their eye on every football team I've ever played on. Everybody has their eye on the most talented guys, and they're interested how those guys act. And you can have a really quiet leader who's a stud, and people will follow his work ethic if he's putting in the effort. People are going to be taking a look at Bear Alexander. They're going to be looking at guys like Zachariah Branch. They're going to be looking at these guys because they are spectacular talents. And so, how Bear Alexander performs this summer, I think, could be an important component of this year's defense. You need a guy like that, not only to be talented and not only to work hard so he's ready, but to show the other guys and to lead the other guys that they're putting in the sort of effort they need to put in too. And I don't know Bear, so I have no idea whether that's likely or not. I just know that that's something that this program really needs, and they need him to step up and do it.
I wonder, how much of what he did or didn't do during the spring is going to carry over. I mean, look, we know what went on behind the scenes. Hopefully, his teammates are going to look past that. So, because you're right,
Yeah, I mean, look,
he needs to be the guy.
He's the most talented guy they have up front, and you can make an argument that may be the most talented guy in the roster. I know that's a big statement, but it might be true. A guy like that either pushes his teammates to get better or shows his teammates that if you're good enough, you can slack off. And I'm not suggesting that's what he's going to do. But I played on teams like that where the most talented guy is a guy that's kind of lazy. And that gives a license to everybody else to be lazy, and that is death to a football team. So we'll see. Actually, we probably won't see. We'll see in September what went on in the summer, but we probably won't know before that because I suspect we're not going to get solid information from the inside. Any other thoughts on this? All right. Another topic. There was chatter on the internet this week about how USC wanted out of the LSU game, which is always the sort of thing that that national reporters like to talk about because it makes USC look bad. Colin Cowherd suggesting on his show that maybe USC shouldn't play Notre Dame anymore. Let's talk about scheduling a little bit because the world has changed going into the Big Ten. The world has also changed because what used to be top 2 make the national title game, then became top 4 make the playoff, now become top 12. So that's 2 pretty significant changes. Well, what should USC's philosophy be when it comes to its out-of-conference scheduling? Eric, what do you think?
My philosophy, I keep Notre Dame, and then honestly, I would play 2 Utah States. That's how I would set up. And Utah State is not a throwaway game, right? I'm not playing any SEC teams week 12 or whatever it is matchup, but I would play Fresno State and San Jose State, something like that. I don't mind if one of them is a Cal or a Stanford or an Oregon State or a Washington State. That's fine, 2 of those. But I don't think USC needs to go out of its way to have a team is going to be a top 5, top 10 team to start the season plus Notre Dame. I think if you play well enough with Notre Dame and 2 teams that are fine, plus the schedule you get, you're going to get those teams in the playoff because I know whoever picks these playoff teams, they don't care. They're going to do an SEC win over the Citadel in week 13 is going to count as a win, just like USC's win against LSU is going to count as a win. It's going to be the way it is.
What if it's a close loss to Stanford, though?
So I would sign up for 3 close losses to Stanford. Really, you can't do anything better than that with your schedule. But no, look, as far as college football goes, the week 1 game, Labor Day, LSU in Vegas, it's going to be phenomenal. I don't want to take that away. I just don't think you need to do it with who you can play and what games you're trying to get to in terms of strategic scheduling advantages.
All right, Mark, it looked to me like one, you didn't like Eric's answer, and then two, you got personally attacked during the course of that at my instigation. So respond.
So I could not disagree with Eric any more than I am right now. Number one, the fact that he even used Colin Cowherd's, they don't need it, but it's a wanting thing. It's funny when people don't need things, it's usually because they already have them. So, people don't need, like Colin Cowherd said, they don't need to live in a mansion. Guess where he lives? They don't need a luxury car. Guess what he drives? So when I hear those types of arguments coming from people like that, it becomes very disingenuous. Now, with that said,
Are you saying McKinney's being disingenuous?
I think he's using Colin Cowherd's disingenuous argument.
Oh, so he's piggybacking on
Or
disingenuous.
however
Okay,
you want.
that's different.
Or
All
whatever
right, go ahead.
From my brick-walled mansion behind me.
I'm just trying to pick a fight, but go ahead, Mark. Let me let you continue.
Look, and Eric already said that. We're going to the 12-team playoff. I would say half the teams, at least half the teams are going to have 2 losses. And I disagree that week 13 against the Citadel is going to weigh just as equally as USC's week 1 game against LSU. Strength of schedule is actually, I think, going to actually play a component in this. Look at Alabama's out-of-conference schedules going forward. They're actually scheduling up. So, I just disagree. There was a time when USC played in the Pac-8 that their out-of-conference games were, power conference teams, Arkansas, whomever it was on that schedule, Missouri, all these games rolling into one. But, if it's okay to play Notre Dame and Cal and Utah State one year and Notre Dame and Stanford and Utah State one year, then who cares? Give me Notre Dame, give me an LSU, give me a Cal if Cal's the same as a Utah State or a Fresno State. I want to keep college football as traditional as possible. And that means having marquee games, playing against teams that you typically don't play against. And with the 12-team playoff, you're being given some leash. You got some latitude. I'll take 10-2 going to the playoffs. And if those 2 losses come against, heaven forbid, Notre Dame and LSU, but you run the conference slate, I'm fine with that.
So, Eric, do you have a response that's anything other than just copycatting some disingenuous argument from a rich guy that lives in a big house? If so, I'll let you say it now.
I mean, that's all I do with anything.
That's right.
So I think where I come from is because the Big Ten schedule, and we've seen it this year, it's so dependent on who you play. So maybe that becomes it. Maybe you have to have a better eye toward the 2028 schedule gets us at the games, and that's much tougher than the 29 schedule, and then you can fill in non-conference there. I'm kind of curious if teams stop scheduling non-conference games 25 years out and 18 years out or whatever they do, just so you can have that better understanding of what those schedules look like and how you can fill in those gaps there. But Mark's got far more faith in the playoff selection committee than I do. I just don't see them going, well, yeah, USC lost 3 games or 4 games, but boy, they played a tough schedule, so we should put them in. I don't have faith in anybody doing that.
Yeah, first of all, anybody who claims to be a USC fan who's saying USC should stop playing Notre Dame, your USC fan card should be revoked immediately. I don't care what arguments you have. Don't tell me you're going to throw away the best rivalry in college football, the most important game on USC's schedule, a gigantic piece of USC's football tradition, to give yourself a chance to make a few more playoffs over the years. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If you believe that, you're dumb. I'm not even going to soften it. If you believe that, you're dumb, or you're a UCLA fan. So I hate that. Look, LSU is a much tougher case because here's the problem. I'm really looking forward to that LSU game. Like, I'm really looking forward to that that LSU game. And not only am I looking forward to it, but I can guarantee you those guys that are doing the PRPs in the coming weeks, they're looking forward to it also. I mean, that is a significant motivating factor. But Eric's right. Scheduling a 50-50 game when you already have Notre Dame and a tough Big Ten schedule, does mean you're handicapping yourself. And maybe USC needed to do that in the Pac-12 days because the conference wasn't very highly regarded. Maybe USC needs to do that now because that's the way you sell out non-conference games. Of course, LSU is not at home, but you know, when USC plays San Jose State, they're going to pull in 50,000 people. Maybe you need 75,000. And so I don't know, but I would hate for those games to go away. Not only for USC, but you know, Texas is playing Michigan this year. I mean, there are these big matchups that you don't want to see go away, and the fact that the playoff has expanded means that you have a little bit more margin for error, but not a ton. 3 losses probably still going to keep you out most years, and if you schedule Notre Dame and LSU, you're scheduling 2 50-50 games, which means it's probably a loss there. That means you gotta really run the table in the Big Ten. Mark, go ahead.
I don't even know how much research Colin put into this. I mean, imagine USC having to play at Michigan and Ohio State, and then at Notre Dame in November when it's -9 degrees. First of all, when was the last time USC played in South Bend in November?
It's true. That's where he went off the tracks of doing the late game at Notre Dame.
Yeah, like I said, he was
those
using
those Notre Dame games in November are chilly. I've sat in the Coliseum for many of them. There's sometimes rain and it's sometimes in the 50s. But look, Cowherd got exactly what he wanted out of his comments because we're now talking about his show. That being said, I have heard plenty of people say it's time to throw the Notre Dame series overboard, and every time I hear it, it just makes me angry.
Don't do it.
I mean, I insulted everybody who thinks that way. That's not a very nice thing to do, but I'm sticking to it. Okay, well, go ahead, Mark. Last word on schedule.
I'm sitting right next to you, Chris. I'll throw the insult right with you.
All right, good. Mark is also insulting people. That's what I was hoping would happen. All right, let's do another quick installment of USC versus the Big Ten in history. Who wants to go first on this one?
I'll go first. So it was a toss-up between the 1989 and the 1990 games that USC played against Ohio State. I loved the game at the Coliseum. It was a curb stomping. It was 42-3. But that was my first trip going to Columbus, Ohio. And to actually experience, back then they had something called Heinegate. Heinegate is a tailgate where you're literally walking through beer cans up to your knees. I'm not joking. But the atmosphere inside that stadium was amazing. USC, they started the game blocking a punt, got up 7-0. Game kind of went back and USC built a big lead. Ohio State came back. I know that USC was running the ball like crazy in that game. Ricky Irvins was at that point a Heisman contender when he finished that game. But that game ended early. They didn't get to finish it. It ended because of thunder and lightning. So I got to walk out of there, hands raised, 35-26, and Ohio State fans thinking, we just didn't have enough time to finish the game. Nah, it wasn't going to happen. Didn't matter. They couldn't stop student body left. They couldn't stop student body right. I mean, like I said, Ricky Irvins, 200 yards. Even Mazio Royster, he was going all over that defense. That was one of my favorite games.
Mazio was a good back. Nobody talks about Mazio Royster anymore. Guy could play.
Yeah.
All right, McKinney, what do you got?
So I got another big running game. 2007 at Nebraska, and I'm trying to put this on this USC team to go and do some of this stuff to the Big Ten opponents this year. But that was that game. I mean, 313 rushing yards for USC. Stephon Johnson had like 150, 5 touchdowns. They averaged 8.2 yards a carry, and that includes like some late game stuff where you're just trying to kill the clock. I think it was like 42-10 going into the fourth quarter. Just another one of those games where the opposing fans were like this is it. We got him. This can't go on forever. Here comes USC. We've got a handle on this. And then, I mean, that game, so it wasn't quite that home game at Arkansas start, but it had a little bit of that, offensively where they just like, what is happening? Stanley Havili is going like 50-yard plays. And again, just putting that on this USC team, take that out there to some of these Big Ten games. But that one was just, I mean, it was USC football, right? Defensively, absolutely all over them, swarming them. Sam Keller, I think, in that game for Nebraska, and then just running as much as they wanted over that Nebraska defense.
Yeah, that was fun. Have we done the 2009 USC Ohio State game yet?
I don't think so.
We'll be keeping track. All right, well, I'm going to talk about it. That was my first trip to the Horseshoe. And, that was obviously Pete Carroll's last year. And it turned out that it was a football team that wasn't that great. But that was a spectacular night. I mean, Kirk Herbstreit said it was the most electric he had seen Ohio State Stadium. And that's saying something. But you're talking about, the defense has dominated all game. And Ohio State had a good defense. And, to have a freshman quarterback lead a drive that started, I think, somewhere around their own 10 for a touchdown in that atmosphere was really special. And, Matt Barkley obviously made some big throws, huge contribution from, running back from Louisiana. Joe McKnight was special on that last drive. That was a great night. And I'll say this, I've been to Notre Dame Stadium many times. I've been to some other exciting places. The Horseshoe is up there when it comes to incredible college football atmospheres. And it probably doesn't hurt that it was a powerhouse USC team coming to town. I don't know if it's like that for every Minnesota home game, but it was special. And I remember there was some horrible Ohio State fan woman who kept putting a banner right in front of my face every time Ohio State would do something good and screaming in my ear. Just an awful person. So I'm glad she had a miserable night. I hope she's had a lot of miserable nights since then. Okay. I feel guilty right now because I know Katz is going to watch this and he's going to be angry that we haven't touched any of those 1960s, 1970s games. And I almost did one this week just to, even though I didn't watch it, just to make sure it was covered. Maybe next week.
He's going to have a lot to say when he comes back. How's that?
He will. And I think he's going to be critical of the two of you. I don't think he's liked what you've been doing. Okay. All right. That's it, guys. Are you ready? Are you ready for 10 questions?
I think so.
Listen, I know how you like it when I mess around with the rules. That's an important part of this game. And so there are going to be a couple of questions in this one that I'm not going to let both of you answer. Whoever's turn it is, they're going to get to decide whether they answer it or whether they pass it to their opponent. A good answer gets a point. A bad answer gets a point for the opponent. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Question number 1. Your favorite trick play in a college football game. McKinney, you start.
My favorite one is, again, I'm starting off on fire here. I'm gonna give you a play that's not my pick, and then I'm gonna give you my pick. The one that never gets talked about, Presbyterian against Wake Forest had a trick play where they bounced a ball out wide to a wide receiver. And I love taking advantage of dumb defensive players not falling on every single loose ball drives me absolutely crazy. They bounced the ball out to a wide receiver. The defense stops. He throws it for a touchdown. That was one of my favorites. Now, my favorite one with the most sort of at stake are the Boise State against Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. That the hook and ladder. And then, so the hook and ladder is it for me, because I know you love when we only pick one answer. So I'm only going to give you one answer for this one. The hook and ladder touchdown was phenomenal. The stakes, the situation, how it got pulled off, phenomenal. The Statue of Liberty was great too, but the hook and ladder is the answer.
Yeah, legendary. Mark Culkin, what do you got?
Yeah, I like the one that USC ran. The fake, well, not really a fake, but the punt that Michael Pittman returned for a touchdown.
Yeah, have a guy who looks like he's a returner on the opposite side of the field, and yeah, that was a fun one. I tell you, the one that just jumped to my head, and I wish I would have thought of this earlier so I could look it up. There was a fake punt that somebody ran where like one of the upbacks like collapsed and fell on his back like he died. Do you remember this? It was a disaster. It completely fell apart.
There was yeah, Arkansas State ran something like that. He like fell like hands over his chest and fell backwards.
Somebody goes in motion.
Didn't go anywhere.
First, somebody goes in motion for reasons I can't understand. Because if you're on the punt return team, you saw somebody go in motion, your first thought is, wait a minute, something weird is happening. So I guess they wanted to highlight that they were going to run a trick play. And then the guy just falls down. He had no role in the play. The play got destroyed. Nebraska had a fantastic fumble-rooski in the 80s. And I wish I would have looked that one up so I could maybe we could put a link up on the board, but that was a fantastic play that I'll always remember. Okay, I like both those answers, but I think, and McKinney was lucky because he went first, but that Boise State last drive against Oklahoma, the Fiesta Bowl, had two legendary trick plays, and so he's going to get the point. He's up 1-0. Question number 2.
Sorry, the Pittman one, just to give Mark a little credit. The Pittman one is so unbelievable to me because a couple teams have done that. To guess right and to have that work out, like John Baxter got a lot of grief when he was here, but he did some stuff that was pretty remarkable. And to get that one right and have it work the way it did, where everybody's fooled, that one, I almost went with that one. It was a good one.
I'm up in the press box going, what's going on here?
Yeah.
We were all
and look, when you're on that punt team, you're not looking at the ball, right? You're not looking in the sky. You're looking for the returner. And anyway, that was a fantastic play. And it kind of leads into this question number 2. All right, I'm going to invoke the new rule for the first time. Mark Culkin, you can choose to answer this question, or you can choose to force Eric McKinney to answer this question. The question is, Clay Helton was right about blank. What do you want? Do you want it or do you want to pass it?
Just like I want to play LSU, just like I want to play Notre Dame in the same season, I'm going to answer this question.
That's bold. All right. What is your answer?
Clay Helton was right about Jonah Monheim, Miller Moss, Mason Murphy, and every single one of the players that are still on the roster today that he recruited.
Okay. I think we all had some doubts whether he was right about Mason Murphy before spring practice, but yes, he did leave some key players on the roster. And you know what, Mark? I'm going to give you a point because that was bold, because it's almost a trick question to give me an answer about Clay Helton being right about anything. I thought for sure you'd kick that to McKinney. So just on guts, you get a point. It's 1-1. 3 best college football coaches of your lifetime. Eric McKinney, go.
I had a Clay Helton answer ready to go. All right.
Is it funny? If it's funny, you can share it.
I'm not going to call my own. So he was right about showing up every day and continuing to collect a paycheck. That's what he was right about.
That's fair.
The 3 best college coaches. So Saban is locked in top 3. Pete Carroll is locked in top 3. Then you had some wiggle room. I think with the third one, I'm going to go degree of difficulty, and I'm going to say Bill Snyder is my third one to build what he built at Kansas State. And it still feels like it's coasting on a lot of what he did. And that's why they're still competitive. There's guys that won more and won bigger. But that boy, was that a tough job to do what he did.
All right, Mark Culkin, who are the 3?
Yeah, man. I cut so many babies in half on this one. I got the reason why John McKay doesn't make the list is because he left to go to Tampa Bay. Had he stayed at USC, he would have had more than the 4 national championships. But I'm going to go Bear Bryant, Pete Carroll, Nick Saban. And Bobby Bowden was the other honorable mention guy, just because he did it for so long and he did it at one place.
Well, you could make the argument for Joe Paterno too, or did Joe Paterno's troubles get in the way of him?
That kind of, yeah, that threw him out.
Yeah. So I like both answers. Eric's answer was exactly mine. I actually think Bill Snyder is the best college football coach of the last 25, 30 years. Other coaches can win at Alabama, maybe not the way Nick Saban won. We'll be fair to Nick, but other coaches can win at Alabama. Urban Meyer won at 2 schools that won a lot of that won even when he wasn't there. Pete Carroll won at a school that other schools have won at. Kansas State was a maybe 1 in 10 program when Bill Snyder arrived, and they had some winless seasons. They had no tradition, no recruiting base, no support. They had nothing. For him to build what he built there, I think is the most impressive coaching job I've ever seen. And he's a William Joel Cardinal. So Eric McKinney gets the point. It's now 2-1. He's the William Joel Cardinal that I cheer for. Unlike the other one that's up in the Pacific Northwest.
I'm going to keep that Wikipedia list just up on the screen at all times and just throw random names out as I need.
There aren't that many names. There are only a couple of names.
We already did them all.
Yeah, we're done. All right. Sport you used to follow but no longer do. Mark Holken, what do you got?
Men's tennis.
Okay, you used to follow it in the McEnroe, Connors, Yvonne Lindell days?
Yeah. It sucks. I couldn't tell you who the best American men's player is. Couldn't tell
Might be you.
Might be me.
Yeah, it's probably not. I'm not. I don't follow it closely, but I think there are people who could beat Mark. All right, Eric, what's your answer?
For me, the biggest drop, I guess, it's not that I totally don't longer follow it, but baseball has sort of rules its way out of a sport where I need to constantly know what's going on and follow it today. I got sucked into the too many games thing. I think that's probably true. And I get what baseball is supposed to be. It's time killer throughout the summer and a place to spend an afternoon and all of that. And that's still enjoyable. But some of the replay stuff and some of the, he's this far off the base and we need to watch it for 45 minutes, but we're trying to cut time and all of that stuff. It feels like they've sucked a little bit out of what it used to be. So again, that for me, it's the drop. It's not that I don't pay attention to it at all anymore, but not to the degree that I used to.
Yeah. Yeah, both good answers. I actually agree. I really enjoyed watching tennis when I was a kid, when those guys were playing. It was exciting. It was fun to watch the meltdowns.
That Jimmy Connors, Aaron Krickstein US Open match was just amazing. I stayed up till 2 a.m. to watch that thing finish.
And just to see Jimmy or John scream at official, I mean, it was fantastic. I'm also with Eric though. I played baseball growing up. I watched every Dodger game I could. When I was a kid, that meant, I didn't have anything else to do. So I probably watched all of them. I just can't do it anymore. It's become boring to me. And that's probably more me than it is Major League Baseball, but it's a struggle now. I have trouble following a game. Okay. You're both getting a point. 3-2. It's a good game. I'm excited about this. Okay. If USC had a board of directors, name the 3 people you would appoint. Mark, go.
All right. So we're going to start with Donald J. Trump, Marcus Allen, Vanessa Bryant.
All right.
Need to know
Eric, can you give an answer better than that? I'm gonna have him defend it, but first I'm gonna have you give your answer. Go ahead.
I can think of 3 people who might get along better in a room. So I'm going to go, Pete Carroll is on my list because of the football connection. I need him to drive conversations and keep these other two guys focused on football. George Lucas is in there for his access to be able to put these players on TV and in movies and all of that sort of stuff. Creative director, maybe there. And then Mark Benioff is there for the wallet. And we got to get stuff done.
All right, very interesting. Okay, Vanessa Bryant. Mark, help me out.
So we're talking about the wallet. We're talking about somebody who has a love for the university. They were going to send their kids to USC. So I want somebody there who has that, I guess, emotional attachment. As far as the former president, I want somebody who makes things happen. Good or bad, he makes things happen, and he knows how to run businesses. And when he's in charge of things, stuff happens. And look, Eric talked about Pete Carroll for football. I got Marcus Allen. If, Ronald Reagan's going to give him a call, it's good enough for me.
I mean, I would also put Ronald Reagan on the board, but I don't think he's available now.
That's why.
Okay, I don't know what to make of the Vanessa Bryant answer. So Mark gets Eric gets a point. It's now 4-2.
Two USC grads plus Carroll. That's where I stuck with significant USC ties.
Putting Pete Carroll on there was going to get my vote. That the reality is that I want him to be a part of USC football. He would be a fantastic fundraiser and a great sounding board. I want Pete to come back. Okay. Question number 6, and McKinney, we're going to do the twist again. You can choose to answer this, or you can choose to kick it to Mark Culkin. USC opponent you respected the most, and I'm not going to clarify this for you because I know you're going to ask for clarification. You're not getting it. You can answer it or you can pass it. What do you want?
I'm not going to ask for clarification. I'm going to give you 6 answers like I always do. That's the clarification. The USC opponent I respected the most individually was Oregon State wide receiver Mike Hass, who played USC twice and caught like 500 yards of passes. The team were those Stanford 12 offensive linemen that just absolutely brutalized USC and was always not, you're never jealous of Stanford, but it was like, boy, it'd be fun to watch USC's offense do a little bit of that more often when they were doing that.
Hey, Mark, what do you think about that answer? Do you think that answer deserves a point?
No, there's only one answer. There's only one opponent USC respects. Notre Dame.
I'm going to give Mark the point, and I'm going to give Mark the point not because it was a bad answer, but because I want the game to be close. It's 4-3. All right.
Great. Scoring sympathy points.
All right, give me your best NIL idea for USC football. Guys, we need to raise revenue. So how are we going to do it? What's the best NIL idea you've got going? Mark Culkin, go.
So they need to come to some sort of marketing agreement with Caesar's Palace out there in Vegas. Buy a package of season tickets, get a 3-day, 4-night stay, whatever, in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace. And with every $100 you bet, 10% gets kicked back to House of Victory, something along that lines.
Interesting. Okay. McKinney, what do you got?
So mine's not a revenue raising idea, but it's NIL related. I think USC can do, and again, okay, it's not USC, it's USC adjacent, right? How this works, but boy, those apartments like at the Americana, I've always seen as housing for US player families. Right? I mean, there's a connection there. If they had that as something where, yeah, if you're from Florida, if you're from Georgia, there's an apartment tied to this for your family to be able to come out and live here. And again, we're not talking about stuff that's quote unquote legal or whatever it is. I mean, there's no legality anymore with it. But that was always something for me with that distance, right? When you're going after those guys from Texas and Florida and Georgia, it's the living area and how you connect families and all of that. That always seemed like a pretty easy sort of mix for me to be able to do that. Again, it's not revenue raising, but to not have to worry about housing or living space for players or families. That would be, I think, a big boost to recruiting.
Okay, I like that. I like both answers. You both get a point. It's 5-4. We got two straight music questions coming up, and I know, Mark, this is your wheelhouse. This is your wheelhouse, and we're talking music. I expect you probably win both these points, but we're going to see. All right, best era for popular music. McKinney, you go first.
It's not going to get the point. It's not going to get the point.
Oh, okay.
But it's the most
Mark,
truthful.
you win.
And this go. No, I'm gonna finish so you can understand. It's the most truthful, and it speaks to the most people out there. It's the music of whenever you listening to this were a teenager, and that's what sticks to you, and that's the best era for each individual person.
Very pragmatic approach, Eric.
It is. It is. Now,
I'm here to please the fans.
Give us a real answer, Mark. Give us a real answer.
So the real answer is the 80s. It was literally the perfect storm of all types of music genre coming together and being popular at the same time. I mean, you had, well, I did it, the punk rock scene, you had the pop scene, you had rap, you had hip hop, country was starting to come into play. I mean, you had everything from Hall & Oates, the Go-Go's, Social Distortion, Run DMC, Tears for Fears, Oingo Boingo, Devo. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I can't think of a better era for music than the 80s.
What about now? You can listen to Taylor Swift's song in 6 different versions all at the same time.
I can tell you if I was listening to one song of hers. I have no idea.
All right, so Mark answered the question. Eric's question, or Eric's response, was probably true for the most part, although it's not in my case. I did grow up in the 80s. I thought the 80s were fantastic, and so I like Mark's answer. I actually think the latter half of the 60s is the answer. That's when music changed the most, and you have more classics coming out in a very short period of time than probably any other time. But Mark gets a point. It's now 5-5 with 2 questions left, and we got another follow-up question, and it just so happens to touch on the 80s. Mark Holken, Metallica or Guns N' Roses?
Oh, it's GNR. I mean, Slash, Axl Rose, Guns N' Roses was the epitome of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I cannot think of a band that did it better than them on all 3 phases. So yeah, give me GNR.
He says GNR. McKinney, you agree?
That it's close. That's fine. Honestly, Guns N' Roses is the answer for me just because Guns N' Roses didn't shut down Napster. And that's what puts that over the edge for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Napster, forgot all about that.
So this would have been a very easy answer for me in 1987. It would have been Guns N' Roses. The problem I have with, and I think Guns N' Roses at their peak, probably the better band. Metallica had quality output for longer. The stuff over the last 20 years, it does nothing for me. But Guns N' Roses had one unbelievable album. Appetite for Destruction is one of the greatest albums of all time. Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 had some great songs. They had a lot of fluff. They needed to find a way to combine it. And that's really it for their output, unless you count Lies. The spaghetti incident was nonsense. So I think Metallica had a longer run, had more good albums, but Guns N' Roses' peak was about as good as you get from a rock band. I like both answers. It's 6-6 going into the very last question. The last question is this. Give Dan Lanning your best advice on when to go for it on 4th down this coming season. This is something that Dan struggled with, and I would like to help our friends up north, and so I want to do what we can. Who wants to go first? It's tie game. Who wants to go first?
Look, all I'm going to do is smile at Dan and give him a thumbs up on every 4th down. You're doing great, Dan. Keep going.
Mark, what's your answer?
So it's going to be week 3. They're playing up in Corvallis. It's going to be 4th down and 2. And I encourage Coach Lanning, have your best offensive player standing right next to you on the sideline. Light up that cigar. It's going to happen. And then before you know it, the Beavers are lining up in victory formation.
I tell you, I'll say this: it will really disappoint me if Dan Lanning changes his approach. The truth is that football coaches for a very long time have been too risk averse on fourth down, and the statistics show you should go for it more than they do. But you want to know why they don't? Dan Lanning shows you why they don't. If you punt on 4th and 2, people don't rip you to shreds on the internet, on television, and they don't make fun of you for months and months afterwards. If you go for it a couple of times and get shut down in situations that are a little bit aggressive, then you get tarred with that forever. So I actually think that Lanning is right to be more aggressive, although maybe not right in all his calls. But man, it's tough. You go for it a few times and have it blow up in your face, then people make fun of you forever. And in his case, he deserves it. Mark, who do you think won this last question?
Because I'm a sporting guy, Eric's answer actually made me laugh.
I asked you that question because I thought you would give an answer like that, and because I didn't want all of your fans in the comments section on YouTube to give me a hard time if I declared Eric the winner. So I appreciate you conceding the game for like the 5th time since we started playing it. It's really fantastic, your sportsmanship. Guys, do we have anything we want to share before we sign off this week? Every week
No,
I ask you.
I was ready for a double twist there. I was ready for that to land back on Mark.
Right?
No, look, I mean, if you're gonna look, if he doesn't want it, I don't want it for him. Okay. All right. I guess that's it for this
I'm a
week.
team player. I'm lifting up Eric's spirits.
You are. You're helping him out, and he had that losing streak. It was tough for him. People made fun of him. So now
This is why Mark's our PRP leader for the summer.
Yeah.
By the way, the other name I was thinking of, Jalen Smith, him and Kobe Covington.
Okay, yeah, he certainly played a lot of snaps for the Trojans. Okay, well, guys, next week we're going to talk. I hope we're going to talk a lot of recruiting because that means that we'll have some good news. Until then, who knows what's going on with recruiting, and who knows what's going on with anything else related to USC football or college football. Everything's up in the air. It's a new world, my friends. All right, USC fans, thank you for joining us this week. Until next week, fight on.